Hello, I am Vicky Manitou Okas, and when we were shopping a couple of days ago, we found a really good price on some old-fashioned roses. So I've been looking for roses that produce fragrant flowers for teas and medicine and rose water, and then also for the rose hips in the fall that I use to make rose hip tea and rose hip syrup. It is so healthy for you. So since we found them this early, I really didn't have time to wait until the container gardening workshop on April 25th to plant them up. So I planted them up already and did a video just to give you a taste of some of what we're going to be doing on April 25th during the container garden workshop at Delectable Tiny Gardens. On April 18th, we're going to be getting the containers ready for the container gardens, and then on the 25th we're going to be planting up some mini gardens that will be setting outside for the summer for beautiful herbs and vegetables for summer harvest. So hey, you know what, come and join us and join in on the fun and work with us, create your own tiny gardens, and see what kind of ideas that we're going to be putting together here at Delectable Tiny Gardens. Guess what we found yesterday? We found some roses at the store for not very much money, so and I found some baskets at Goodwill. Now these are just really light baskets, and we need a temporary home for the roses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line the basket with a paper bag. Okay. I'm going to fold that in. I'm not going to be real fancy about it. Just fold that in. Okay. So that we've got a nice containment for that rose. Now, Anna Marie, we're going to be potting this up into a half barrel later in the summer, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're setting this up so that we can pot it up right now, and it can be a healthy rose to go into the barrel. Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason that I'm using a paper bag here as a liner for this is so that either we're going to cut this apart to take the rose out, so lift by the handles and then set it in the barrel and either cut this apart.
Yes.
Or if we can, we'll just lift the paper bag out of here. Either way. This basket cost me about 50 cents at Goodwill, so we're not going to worry about it. Okay. And this will give us a nice growing rose for the summer that we can transplant
in the fall
or later in the summer, and with very little transplant shot. So when you're using a basket like this, I want to line it with something. So it can either be lined with a paper bag like this, which is not going to last very long, or cardboard, which will last a little bit longer, or some sort of fabric that will eventually degrade as well. And that all creates a temporary basket or container that you can plant your plants into. So we're just going to fill this with a basic potting soil. If I can do this without spilling it, or at least part full. basic potting soil. Okay. Oh, looky what I found. I forgot that I left my container in there. Okay, so do you want the white rose in this one, or do you want the red rose in this one?
Red.
Red bush type rose. Okay, and this is bare rootstock, so we're going to take that wire off of there. There we go. Okay, take the wire off of there that held it all together. And I am going to cut down that bag. It's just an old-fashioned bush rose that will produce nice fragrant flowers and rose hips in the fall. Okay, let's go ahead and unwrap that. Very nice, very, very nice. That's looking pretty good. Okay. Okay. That's just compost on bare root. Okay. I'm going to mix that in. Okay, now what you want to look for is any graft. Because you really want that graft to be above the soil line. Okay. And I'm going to want a little bit more soil in there. What I've got is that I'm going to also use is a combination of mushroom compost and basic potting soil that I'm going to go ahead and fill in on the top of there. Okay, Anna Marie, while I'm mixing up that soil, can you carefully take there's a water jug I'll hand you. Will you go ahead and water that in to settle the soil in that is there? Here you go, right here.
Okay, I'm going to water the base of the plant, around the roots, to settle the soil down around the roots and take out any air pockets. Definitely needs more soil in and around the roots.
Perfect. That's why that's one of the reasons that you water that in really good, is because that watering that in is what settles that around the roots, so you don't have air pockets. And we'll do that 2 or 3 more times as we do this. Okay, what I did was I mixed 2 parts regular potting soil with 1 part mushroom compost, and I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. Fill the pot. Okay, and we're going to water this in again. That helps get the rose off to a good start, and it settles that soil around those roots. Okay, you want to try and plant this at about the same depth that the roses was growing before they unrooted it, as best you can. Okay, Anna Marie?
Looks good so far.
Okay, so go ahead and water that in again. Okay, that soil is nice and wet because it was sitting out in the rain, but go ahead and water that in again. Look, you're playing in the dirt. All right, that should do. So that, see how that carries that soil back down into those roots?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We don't want to overdo it at this point because that bag is going to hold moisture until it starts to break down just a little bit. Okay. I think, see how that settled that a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, we still need a little bit more soil in there. Okay, why don't you go ahead and, did you like the creeping thyme in there with that? Or not the creeping thyme, the garden thyme? Or we could do oregano in there.
Honestly, with the size of pot, I'd leave it as is.
You want it as it is for right now?
Yeah. For the simple fact that roots can compete.
Okay.
And this may take over the time.
Okay. Now the reason that, yes, that's true. Okay. But both creeping, the roses, the reason I'm looking at roses and oregano for your plantings with this is that both will act as a ground cover and both have shallow roots.
Okay.
All right. Whereas that rose will develop deep roots and pull nutrients from deep. Both the oregano and the thyme are shallow rooted, and they will act as a ground cover, and it won't actually compete for the deep nutrients of deep nutrients and water that the rose needs.
Okay.
So, I mean, we can do that now, or we can do that when you put that into its
I-
permanent.
Yeah, I'd rather wait and do that.
Into the permanent? Okay. Anna Marie? This one is a white Floribunda. And since what we're going to pot it up into is not ready yet, I'm going to do a temporary planting into this basket. So I'm going to get this basket ready. And this should have plenty of drainage with the holes on the sides like this. But that won't hold the soil the way it should. So I'm going to get this basket ready to hold soil. And there, I've got a lined basket that I can put this into for a temporary planting. Okay. Now, I'm going to put a little bit of soil in here. The soil that I'm going to use is a mix of organic potting soil and mushroom compost. So it's 1 part, here we go, 1 part mushroom compost and 2 parts organic potting mix. And I'm going to put a little bit of that in the bottom of here. So I'm going to fill that about 1/3 full. Okay. Now I'm going to cut this open. Okay. All right, now this has got wood chip mulch in there. So I'm going to take that apart so I can see what I've got going on in here. I'm just going to leave that in the pot. Okay. This is basically a bare root planting. So I'm going to mix that in there. Okay, this is already starting to grow a little bit. So there's the roots. Okay, and I'm going to bury this up into the soil line. So get those roots down in there. And then when I get done, I'm going to water this in to settle that soil and add any more soil that I need to add. This paper could potentially wick moisture away from the plant. So, but once that soaks up nicely, that should be okay. But we will have to watch it to make sure that that paper does not dry that out too fast. That's looking pretty good. I think that I'm going to remove that one because that's not looking very good. I'm going to leave this one. Okay. I think I want a couple more scoops of potting soil in there. Okay, what you want to watch is if you've got a grafted plant, and I do not see a graft line on this, but there might be. But if you've got a grafted plant, you don't want that graft line needs to stay above the soil line. Because sometimes a lot of times your grafted plants, your grafted roses will grow up from the rootstock, or the rootstock will sucker and choke out the part of the plant that you want. There's a reason for doing grafted roses. It helps change the characteristics of the rose a little bit, the growth habit, and some of the rootstock is hardier and more disease resistant than the top stock is. So there's a lot of good reasons for grafting roses. But roses are notorious for growing up from the rootstock instead of from the grafted part of the rose. So potting up those roses was so much fun, and I can just see them in their permanent home with their herbs and flowers around them, creating a ground cover and a full tiny garden that is going to be absolutely gorgeous going forward. I can almost taste the rosehip syrup now that they will be producing in a year or two. So, you like, subscribe, come and join us at Delectable Tiny Gardens, and let's create gardens together and have some fun playing in the dirt. Who would like to see in your tiny gardens? What do you want to grow for yourself? So thanks for joining me, and let's have some fun.